Welcome back to Switch Movies, y'all. This is where I give Ashleigh a movie she's never seen, and she gives me one I've never seen. And hopefully, maybe this once, we'll like each other's movies. Who knows? That hasn't happened so far yet, but the future is uncertain. This week's theme is revenge. And yes, we've done some basically all dark material. Maybe, we'll do like some happy stuff like best dance movie, best musical, but we'll probably still pick like Les Miserables or something like that.
Oh god.
But this week we went with revenge, and Ashleigh, what was your choice for me?
For Ben, I chose the 1996 film An Eye for an Eye. This was directed by John Schlesinger and written by Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver, and it's actually based on the book of the same name by Erica Holzer, which is funny because in the last episode we did book-to-movie adaptations, and technically this one is that, but it's not for that category. I thought this was kind of safe.
It was safe. I'll give it that. It was safe. Mine was
Okay.
not safe.
I at least thought Ben would not utterly loathe this film like he did my last two. But I guess I'm about to find out. Ben, what'd you think?
This movie... Okay, one, Sally Field can get it in this movie. She is 49 or 50. She was born in 46. This movie's from 1996. And she has better abs than Brad Pitt in Fight Club. It is crazy. Like, I respect her as a woman and an actress, but she can straight up get it in Eye for an Eye, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay.
It's amazing. I don't know, like... Kiefer Sutherland, I'm surprised he ever got 24 and being this really big protagonist of Jack Bauer, because that's like his most known role. Because man, in the 80s and 90s, he just played the skeeziest skis balls ever. And Kiefer Sutherland sexually assaults and murders Sally Field's daughter, and then Sally Field, after the courts fail her, have to take matters into her own hands. And it's real cheesy. It's really 90s.
Okay.
The actual murders are not, and that's the thing, is that like the rest of this movie felt almost Lifetime movie to me, and that's not like a bad thing. It's just like overly dramatic, really cheesy. But both of the murder scenes are super brutal. Like that's why. It almost took me out. I was like, whoa, what is happening? Because, like, the whole leading up to it is just like, oh, we're in the 90s, haha, cheeseball lines. And then in between, it's like, not guilty, dun, dun, dun. It's like, okay, now we're back to the 90s movie. And then later on, Kiefer Sutherland kills another woman, and they don't pull any punches in those scenes. And it was kind of distracting almost. I wish the movie would have picked a tone where, like, they didn't show either one, or it would have been super dark and serious, like almost like a Seven type of atmosphere, because those murders are straight up from Seven, from like a David Fincher type super dark and gritty film. But the rest of the movie was like a different movie. How do you feel about it, Ashley? Obviously you picked it, so you liked it.
I do obviously like it. This one I watched at a very young age. Probably not appropriate to be watching.
Yeah, especially with how it starts.
But I grew up in a family of people who love movies, and that's where my love of movies come from. So there was just like always like, oh, there's this movie. My mom's like, do you want to watch it with me? And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? And then you find it, and then I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, that's not nice. But
Nice.
I was always considered to be a bit mature for my age because everybody else was like 20 years older than me. So I could watch that stuff and I could comprehend what was going on. So that film always stayed with me because I'm just like, oh my God, imagine being this woman who is actually listening on the phone as her daughter is being brutally raped and murdered. Like, how would you live? And rewatching it, I'm like, yeah, still love this movie. It's so good. I didn't necessarily notice a tone difference, but maybe that's because I watched so many movies from the 90s, it's just like normalcy for me. But then again, I almost feel like it's depicting two worlds. You've got the mom's world, which for the most part, up until this tragedy, is kind of a picturesque life. Everything's good. She has a loving husband. She has two beautiful daughters. She's planning, one daughter's on the soccer team. She's learning French. She's top of her class. The other one's just about to have her birthday. Life is really good. And then comes this deranged psychopath who just completely turns her world upside down. So it's like every time she's like trying to bring back some normalcy into her life, as soon as he comes along, shit hits the fan. And so for me, it's kind of just like, yeah, normal person trying to have a normal life, and then some person comes and ruins it and turns your world upside down. So that's pretty much how it is for me. I was surprised to learn that when it came out, film critics absolutely hated this film. And I was reading over some of the critiques that they gave it, and I even told my brother this yesterday, and he just had the same look on his face that I did of, what the fuck? And it wasn't necessarily because they didn't like it, because as I also learned, audiences loved this film. It was the critics that hated it. But it was what they said about it that I'm just going, did they actually watch the film? Because none of what they're saying is accurate, because it's not what happens. They said the film is, immoral, promotes vigilantism, and is all about this insane amount of bloodlust, and that's what it promotes. And I'm like, that's not remotely true at all. I mean, it's not even until 55 minutes into the film that Sally Field's character decides to go the route of revenge. Up until then, despite everything that's happening, she's still a model citizen. She doesn't do anything illegal. She stalks him, but back in the 90s, stalking laws weren't really a thing. And so she still is not invading his life, she's just observing him. And even when she immediately sees he's kind of stalking and preying on somebody else, she doesn't go to him or attack him. She goes straight to the police to give them the heads up. So it's not like I do not look at her as a vigilante. So I mean, Death Wish, way more into the vigilante territory, and that got 4 sequels and a reboot. This, I do not see the bloodlust, as they say. I think that's an unfair critique of the film, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm like semi-reading Roger Ebert's review right now, and he was not a fan of it at all. But yeah, like, I think where people got that is because they made Kiefer Sutherland just so unjustifiably evil, like to the point where he kicks a dog. It's like, okay, as if, raping an underage girl. This guy doesn't like animals? Ugh, let's kill him. She's like, okay, like, he can be a terrible person without him, like, just being like this slick back hair guy and saying racial slurs. And it's like, okay, you can make him human. You can make him like a person. So I understand why critics wouldn't like it and why I feel like you can get that whole justifying vigilantism, but I feel like that's almost every revenge movie. I mean, everyone's going crazy for John Wick, and even though he's an assassin, you're like, hell yeah, I'd headshot 40 people in 2 days if someone killed my dog. Like, everyone, like, I don't think like that's necessarily a detractor from the movie. There's other revenge movies I was thinking of, like Blue Ruin, where it makes revenge look just awful, like you just don't want it. And another movie which I might almost suggested that we might review later, I Saw the Devil, is kind of in the same vein,
right?
Just like, I don't know, I think it's because you grew up kind of with this movie, and I mean, it's almost kind of the same, besides movies that hold up like Pulp Fiction or Jurassic Park or Fight Club, and even those movies, like I just watched The Matrix in theaters, and that movie holds up so well, but even, they're like flipping out their Nokia flip phones and like wearing all leather, and it's like, okay, I love this, but damn, that's 90s as hell. And so I think it's just that, where even classic movies are just, they're filmed differently, they're acted differently, and so like it almost gets put into like a time capsule, to where like the acting's good. Sally Field and what's his name? The dad. Ed Harris, yes, are great in the movie, but it's still like that acting type of acting, and it's like,
I
yeah,
think
tone it down a little bit.
I think to a degree, if you go in watching a film that is of a different era, you really have to go in thinking about what things were like in that era and then take it for that. Because, you know, like when somebody comes to me and they watch like an 80s horror film and they're going, oh my god, that was so campy and cheesy. I'm like, they all were. It was the 80s. I'm like, that's like, you know, being angry at McDonald's for being takeaway food. That's just how it is. So, I mean, it's also the same as, I mean, there are some black and white films, and there was a different acting style back then, where it was very dramatic. The looks and the glances and everything like that. And so I know that there are some people who look at that and they're like, oh my god, those are so badly acted. I'm like, no, at the time that was acting. That was how you did it. So you can't go and say, well, it's not the same as it is now, so I don't like it. You have to go mentally time travel, I guess. But I mean, I just think that I didn't have a problem with how Kiefer Sutherland's character was written. He was truly written as a psychopath, and one of the traits of a psychopath is harming animals. So I guess they just pulled it right out of the textbook and said, sure, let's throw that in there. I think it was just, I mean, at least it wasn't like, technically, it wasn't necessarily a random scene thrown in there. Like, there was that scene where he's kind of going a little bonkers, and you can see that his urges are getting the better of him, and he's banging away on the drumsticks on his legs, and you see like he's gonna snap, and he's gonna need that outlet soon. I mean, that's kind of random, but at the same time, it's how you realize why he goes back to the second victim's place. But at least with the dog and his behavior, you're seeing a day in the life of a psychopath, because Sally Field's character is following him, and she's just going, who is this despicable person? And she's grossed out and disgusted. And I mean, the fact that she actually chose to follow him on more than one occasion, I give her kudos for that, because if I don't think I could stomach to follow and look at the person who brutalized my child. I mean, that's just insane. I think that the whole thing about the film saying she's out for revenge, I think that there is at least an error in the script when it comes to that aspect. There's the scene where because she's in a support group for people who have lost family members to violence, and she quickly learns that there's kind of a conspiracy going on with some of the members, where some of them get together and actually plan to seek out their own form of justice. And she decides to do this. And when she goes to meet them and she's sitting down there like, why do you want to do this? And she gives the basic, I'd say, easy answer of saying, guy raped and murdered my daughter and he got away with it. I'm going, but that's not really the reason you're there. You're there because he just stalked and threatened your daughter, your remaining child who's like 6. And that was the catalyst for her to kind of go off the deep end. It wasn't about what happened to her first daughter. She was trying to process that, even though the system failed her. I didn't see this as an act of revenge. I saw this as an act of desperation of a woman trying to protect the only child she has left. Like, if she did manage to get arrested for that, a psychologist and a defense attorney would easily argue she did this as an act of self-defense, because in her mind that's what it was. So the fact that it is a revenge film at the end of the day, but the fact that they're focusing solely on what she did as an act of revenge kind of bugged me.
I think that's why critics are saying that it's almost pro-vigilante, because he gives her every excuse and every valid reason. Like, you can have a conversation like, well, at the end, she, like, you know, in Death Wish, he is going out in, like, you know, alleys and finding these guys.
Yeah.
Whether they're just standing on a street corner or if he finds them mugging someone else, he's actively going out. So that's where you can complain about, like, okay, this is straight up vigilantism. But she's like, they're crafting this narrative in the movie where he went up to her other daughter, he keeps stalking her, he kills someone else, so he's like still a threat to society. He's, you know, and at the end, spoiler alert, like he shows up at her house to finish the job. And so like she kind of entraps him in like this, oh, it's self-defense, you came to attack me, now I get to shoot you. And so I still get why people have like, okay, this is very pro, like, take the law into your own hands. And you're right, the lawyering and the police force in this movie shouldn't even be in this movie. They're so inept and terrible, and they serve no purpose. And that was like my main problem with the movie, is that it wasn't poorly acted or poorly directed. It was just kind of boring for me. Like her stalking him wasn't like exciting or suspenseful. Like there was that one moment where, you know, he's hanging out with her younger daughter in the playhouse and she doesn't come back from recess. And then, you know, she goes to school and you're wondering for like half a second if, you know, she got kidnapped or something, but then she runs out. I felt like they could have played that out more. Either like, you know, she went home with a friend, or she like got, you know, detention or after class for being late from recess or something. Like I wish they would have played that angle up more, because that was like the only time where I was like, oh, did he kidnap her? Oh, never mind.
I suppose I get what you're saying. I just don't think it would have worked on account of the fact that she didn't know that he had turned the tables on her. And the dumb part is, and I will agree, especially in this especially in this aspect about the ineptitude of the police, because it's the fucking policeman's fault that Kiefer Sutherland's character goes after her and her daughter. Because, yeah, she was stalking him, and he figured that out, and he flat out told her to, you know, he's just like, oh, really? Okay, that's how you want to be? But he's not scared or intimidated, because he's like, you can't do shit. But then, because she goes to the policeman who was handling her daughter's case and says, I saw him, he's watching another woman, she's in danger, and they're like, okay, A, stay away from him, which is sound advice.
Yeah.
But also, they don't take her warning seriously, and then she tries to, you know, help these people, which conveniently, they don't speak English, and that husband was a douchebag, by the way.
Yeah, that was another scene that, like, was so 90s, where everyone's just screaming over the top, and he's just like, okay, you go. No, you're bothering my wife, go. And she's like, no, take 3 seconds to everyone stop talking, and then just be like, hey, this guy killed my daughter and he's delivering groceries here. Just a heads up. Like, that's it. That's all you have to say. And the fact that she doesn't ever come back and try and warn her, the fact that she's like can't get that sentence out. That's not a complaint about this movie, but just in movies in general that do that, it's so frustrating to be like, well, no, listen, no, you were done. It's like, no, that's not how conversations work. Because if you really want to say something to somebody, you could get it out.
Yeah, that was kind of like giving me heart palpitations. I'm like, oh my god, please just let her warn you, for God's sake. But she tells the policeman, and instead of him, you know, actually being the one to go warn this woman, like, if he doesn't speak Spanish, then get an officer who does, who could translate for you. But the fact that 2 policemen would have come to her door would have made them actually stop to listen. And they could have, you know, that's like, okay, we could look into that. Maybe then we could put a surveillance on him. We could follow him, catch him in the act. But no, what does he do? He goes out by himself to this guy, hits him, threatens him, and essentially pisses him off. To the point where he's like, well, I know exactly who's been watching me, so I guess I will go and get my payback. And it's like, well, see, he wouldn't have done that if you hadn't have gone and tried to act like, you know, a freaking cowboy. So the police and the law in general is just a secondary villain in this film. I feel so sorry, because it's reality. so many
Yeah.
people, so many things going wrong because the justice system failed. And in this case, it would have been a slam dunk case. They had DNA evidence, it nailed him, and the only reason it went bad was because the DA's office switched attorneys, the other one got transferred, and he was in the middle of promising to give a portion of the DNA evidence to the defense. Prosecution had theirs, and the new guy didn't know that, so it never happened. So on the basis of fairness, that evidence got thrown out, and without it they don't have a case, so case was dismissed and he gets to go free. And that's really effed up, but that's really accurate to reality. So I was just like, well,
I'm not saying like the justice system fails, but like they literally say that she has skin samples from the girl from like defensive wounds, so that's another sample, and then there's his fingerprints in the house. So it's like they can prove that he was there, and then with his past, they can prove that he's a violent repeat offender. So if they couldn't
yeah,
get
but
him
that
for
comes
like
down
that,
to but that falls into the category of circumstantial evidence at that point. If you can't use the DNA evidence, then a lawyer could easily say there is another reason that his skin was under her fingernails. They could say, oh, you know, she bumped, because crazy things happen, and so they need something that's really solid.
they can at least get it to trial, because like they don't. It's like the case gets dismissed in pre-trial. They can get it in front of a jury, and like a lawyer can convince a jury.
Not on circumstantial evidence, you can't though.
You can convince a jury on circumstantial evidence. I'm not saying you can convince a judge, which doesn't happen in this movie, but you can convince a jury on circumstantial evidence.
Yeah, but on this case, the main thing that they had was the DNA, and the DNA got thrown out, and without it, yeah, but because the DNA is how they say how they came to the conclusion to even look at him as a suspect. So if you take that out, you have to go back to the beginning and you're stuffed, because you know you're not going to be able to go, hey, so we know you did it. Do you want to volunteer your DNA a second time? That's not going to happen. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting how it again goes into the fact that anti-vigilantism, because she backs out. She decides she doesn't want to go with this option of hurting him.
She backs out because she's gonna get arrested by the FBI.
Yeah, there's that. But at least that shows that she is a person with, you know, morals, and does have some respect for the law. And she's like, well, okay, I won't do it. But then she gets pushed when she finds out that he's gone and raped and killed again, and it was the woman she was trying to warn very poorly, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
And she's just like, he's not going to stop. So she does something about it, and at least she was smart about it. The original plan was really dumb. Like, he pulls in, he gets out of the car, you shoot him. Like, no, that would 100% lead to you getting arrested.
Especially with the gun she legally bought.
No.
Was it illegally bought?
No, it was the other guy. He gave her a gun in a paper bag, so I imagine it wouldn't have probably had serial numbers removed or something.
Yeah.
But at least she had I think if I was to break down that scene, I could point out where there was some planning flaws. But for the most part, yeah, it's your house. You do look like you've been having a shower, and now he's dead, and your back window has been broken into. So yeah, absolutely, this is a case of self-defense. You know, I don't necessarily buy the cop sitting at the end and going, I know what you did. I'm like, I don't think you're that smart. No offense to him.
No, it's true, because like if they found like Kiefer Sutherland, you know, murdered somewhere, and she has like a kind of a weak alibi for it, then yeah, you can say that line. But there's a broken window, signs of a struggle, and him shot in her house. Like, no, like I'd believe that this guy came to kill her.
Yeah, so I didn't necessarily buy him being like, I'm super intelligent and I know you orchestrated this whole thing. Like, no, you.
Yeah, there needed to be a scene where he like runs into her while she's following him or something like that. Like, he needs to be following her while she's following Kiefer Sutherland. Like, so, like, because like they never show him doing any police work besides putting a gun to Kiefer Sutherland and being like, "Hey, Sally Field is stalking you, and she's watching your every move. So don't you dare go to Sally Field's kid and try and murder her." It's like, thanks, bro. Good job.
Oh dear. I can point out flaws. I think any sane person should be able to, even if you love something, if you recognize a flaw, you should be able to say, yeah, there are some flaws, and there are. It's not a completely 100%, work of art, but I think it's on message. I think it's a good story, and I think the performances are brilliant. Ed Harris even has some really good moments, because he has moments where you kind of look at him and you just go, yeah, I don't think he's really very sympathetic to what's going on, because the daughter who was killed is actually his stepdaughter, and the youngest child is actually his biological child. And yet we do get a couple of nuggets where you see that's not the case. He's really just someone who's trying to keep his family together and trying to move their life forward. And yet I love that they throw in a couple of moments that bring you back to the fact of, no, he actually did love and care for this girl, and she was a daughter to him. And you have two of those moments. One, when the judge dismisses the case and he snaps, and especially when the guy mocks them by stuttering because their daughter had a stutter.
Yeah.
So that kind of indicates, like, he's basically confessing, even though they knew it was him. And so Ed Harris's character attacks him in the courtroom, and it's just like, yeah, I'd want to knock his fucking lights out too. And then the other one is Sally Field is still working through her issues, and she's getting mad, and she makes quite a hurtful comment saying, it's not the same for you, she wasn't your daughter, and he snaps. And he's just like, how dare you say that to me? And then at first he's angry, and then later on he's crying, and he's like, I raised her, I loved her, and I miss her too. And I was just like, that broke my heart. And I'm just like, yeah, he cares as much as you do. He's just dealing with it differently, which is the case of all people in mourning. We all grieve differently. So I really like that they put that in there.
Yeah, that's honestly what I wanted more from, is about the family dynamic. Like, I feel like should have gotten murdered. She follows him once, realizes it's a bad idea, realizes her family is falling apart because she's obsessing over this, and then the rest of the movie should have been like about her family healing and coming together and stuff like that. And then, like, with 20 minutes left, Kiefer Sutherland shows up at the playground to stalk her other daughter, and then she's like, okay, I gotta finish this. And then, like, I felt like that would have been, because, like, he shows up right away, and I'm like, okay, where are they gonna go with this movie? Like, it's already so, like, everything's in place, but I have an hour left. Like, what's gonna be this hour? And it felt a little meandering. I felt like if they would have saved that scene, which is a good suspenseful scene, towards the end, and you're like, okay, they've moved on with their lives. Kiefer Sutherland is living on, the other side of town. They're going on vacation. She's learning to love her other daughter and respect her other daughter's memory. And then, boom, life gets shattered again. She's like, okay, this is not going to end. This guy is a problem. I need to solve this problem. And I felt like they could have subbed, like, the other lady getting murdered for that. Like, I felt like that was a little too much. And I felt like they should have kept it within the family dynamic where this guy is going to keep coming. He has some kind of vendetta, or he, like, you can still put that cop scene in there where he kind of spills the beans that she's been following him. And that's where he figures out, okay, like, I have to deal with this lady, and I'm going to go kill the other daughter. And so, like, it would have made it more personal and would have involved Ed Harris a little bit more. And then when he finds out what she's doing, he, like, turns around. I'm like, okay, he's going to get there right in time, and he's going to kill Kiefer Sutherland. And they're going to both form this alibi together, and it's going to be this, big secret that brings the whole family together, as fucked up as that is. But no, he like pulls up after everything's done, and he's like, oh, you Sally Field. I'm like, what? Okay. All right.
I love how you've pretty much just, like, rewritten the whole script.
Yeah. Just like you're moving the pieces around.
I mean, I'm sure there's a way that they could have made that work, but with the timeline, what you're saying just wouldn't make sense because for her to be moving on with her life would mean she's not stalking him anymore, and if she's not stalking him, then she's not going to the cops, and then the cops don't really have a reason to go after him, and then I mean, yeah, there are the occasional flaws, and I'm sure that they could have. I mean, they could have done something more to the fact of instead of it. I mean, honestly, they gave Kiefer's character a lot of patience, surprisingly. I mean, he knows that she's watching him, and he does nothing, and then Cop tells him once again, now he's like, oh, now she's dobbing you in, and still he only gives verbal threats. Basically, he's just like, fuck off.
Yeah.
And he's still technically not doing anything, and it's not until she flat out comes, trashes his house, and leaves a bit of a calling card, for basically, which is like the 90s version of a neon sign saying, come and get me.
Yeah.
Only then does he's like, oh, it's on. And I'm just like, this was like 3 strikes. He's like, yeah. He gave you 2, 3 strikes, and you're out. But yeah, they definitely probably could have gone with the other way of, there was almost, I guess he's smart enough to have some form of self-preservation. He learned from his mistake. He started using gloves, used a condom in the second crime.
Yeah.
So he's getting into obviously he doesn't want to go to jail, but he doesn't want to change what he's doing. But yeah, they probably could have gone about it a different way. But nevertheless, out of a 5, what would you give this film?
I'll give it a 2.5. Like, it wasn't, I don't think I'm ever going to watch it again, but it wasn't like a painful watching experience. It's just like those like frustrating moments in movies, even stuff like Meet the Parents where, oh, all these bad luck things keep happening to Ben Stiller. Like, I hate that shit. I hate those movies like You, Me, and Dupree, where like, oh, the misunderstood nice guy just keeps messing up. I'm like, oh my God, just say you didn't do this. Say you didn't kidnap the cat or burn down the house. Like, no, they're just like, I'll get him next time. And then when like their spouse turns against them, they're like, why did you do this? You've never done this the whole time I've known you. But they said you did it, so I'm going to believe them. It's like, fuck you, I'm not marrying you now.
It's true.
Yeah, it's just like those type of moments just like frustrate me in movies general, and there were just like too many of those where everyone's just screaming at each other instead of like, okay, here's what's going on.
I totally give you that, and I also hate when they do stuff like that in movies. It's like, yeah, I'm meeting the in-laws for the first time, and the in-laws are saying, oh yeah, you're cheating on so-and-so. It's just like, hang on, I only just walked in the door, I've never met you, and I've been dating this person for 5 years, but yeah, you know me better. Like, yeah, I get it, and definitely...
Oh, we just got engaged, but I'm running into my fiance's high school girlfriend. I'm gonna get super jealous and insecure. It's like, oh my God, stop.
It's, I don't... I think that the lack of communication between the Spanish woman and her husband, Sally Field, that scene is the epitome of everything you just said, and I completely agree with that. That scene was annoying. For me, out of 5, I give this a 4. I know it's not completely perfect, and there are little hiccups here and there, but I think performances are fantastic. Sally Field knows how to grieve. I mean, she just does it so well in so many films, like Steel Magnolias, for example. Oh God, so good. Ed Harris, I think, is so great, and he has some really good nugget moments. And Kiefer Sutherland is terrifying. He's just really great at playing villains. And
he's so slimy.
He's so good at it that now that you pointed out, it's like, how did he get the role of Jack Bauer?
Right?
Like, it's almost like he was pigeonholed as the villain, and then he gets to be the hero. And now people only know him as the hero, which I'm pretty sure for them is even more effed up if they go backwards into his career and go, oh damn, he wasn't a nice person all the time.
I want to see like all these huge 24 fans being, all right, go watch Lost Boys and Eye for an Eye and Stand By Me. There's your Jack Bauer there, buddy. It's like, no, like... And like I compare this a lot to I was just thinking of this movie. It's called The Light Between Oceans. It's with Michael Fassbender and Alicia Vikander, and it's
Mm.
like a pretty simple love story. And I remember reviewing that. It's like, oh, it's kind of like a Lifetime movie, but the performances really elevate it. Like a lot, like the story is real simple, but just like good performances and good directing can really elevate a movie out of something so simple like a Lifetime movie where,
Mm.
oh, my stepmom's boyfriend is gonna beat me. It's like, what?
I'll give you another one. You didn't mention it, but I can imagine as I was watching it, even I kind of nearly rolled my eyes, and I'm like, I bet Ben would have rolled his eyes at this. It's a very opening of the movie, and it's like they're trying to really throw in your face, this woman would never harm a fly. In this case,
Oh,
a
with the
moth.
moth. Yes. Oh God.
Oh, that's
Jeez.
priceless.
And
To
props to the prop department for creating the most giant effing moth on the planet that's like the
I'd have
size
been
of Sally Field's
terrified.
hands. And she's just like, no, this is God's creature. We're gonna let it go. Okay, we get it. We get it.
That was a very on the nose moment of the
Foreshadowing.
very much that. I mean, it was kind of funny.
It was funny.
But on the one hand, like that's super cheesy, but then they kind of, I feel, rectified it 5 seconds later, where because they're shooting it from the outside, you hear footsteps of someone slowly walking. So what you basically are hearing are the sounds of Kiefer Sutherland is stalking the house, and
Yeah.
you kind of hear that. So I'm like, okay, but couldn't we have started with that instead?
That's what
That
that's
would've
what
been
like
better.
I'm saying. Like the first thing I said, like there's these super cheesy moments, but then everything with Kiefer Sutherland is super dark. Like he's almost up there with just like terrible movie villains like the Kevin Spacey from Seven. Like I keep going back to Seven because like that's the movie Kiefer Sutherland belongs in. He doesn't belong in Eye for an Eye. Like he is he is batting out of his league in this movie because he's just that evil.
Oh, there you go.
Alrighty, so the film I picked for Ashleigh is a little more out there. Is Mandy from last year, 2018, directed by Panos Cosmatos, starring Nicolas Cage, and it is definitely a revenge film for the ages. And it's about Nicolas Cage and his wife Mandy, played by Andrea Riseborough. They are living out at Camp Crystal Lake. Yeah, reference. That was that. I'll already say that was the one time I rolled my eyes in this movie. She's like, "Oh yeah, we live at Crystal Lake." I was like, "Okay." Um, and one day, a Christian cult led by Linus Roach stumbles upon Mandy, and he becomes obsessed with her, kidnaps her. Something goes wrong. They kill her, and then Nicolas Cage goes on a rampage. And I absolutely love this movie for the style of it. It is a little slow, but I almost like the first half better than the second half because the second half just goes straight camp, straight B horror, blood gushing, snorting mountains of cocaine, chainsaw fights, uh, crackhead motorcycle devil worshipping groups. It's got everything a horror person I feel like would want, and just all the atmosphere and soundtrack in the world. But I love the first half of just building this world, which I don't think takes place on Earth, which I found just like a nice little cherry on top at the end when it fades into the sunset and there's like three moons and these jagged asteroid mountains like from Armageddon. But Ashleigh, I saw your tweets. Tell me, I've ragged on your movies for 2 weeks straight. I feel like this is the one that you are paying me back for, so let me have it. I want to hear it.
Yeah, as I was watching it, I was immediately transported to when we recorded the last episode. And as soon as we started talking about the Ninth Gate, the first words you said to me were, I have to ask, do you hate me? That was what you asked. And so I'm watching this, I'm like, this is payback. This is what I
Not
get
at all.
for making you watch the Ninth Gate and Bloodfest. This took me 5 hours to watch, and it's a 2-hour film because I had to keep stopping to go to the lounge room to talk to my mom. I'm like, so I'm watching this movie. She's like, oh yeah, how's that? And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck's going on, but I hate it, and I want to stop watching it, but I can't stop watching it because I have to actually finish it. And she's just like, okay, go then. I'm like, I don't want to go back to my room. I don't want to go back and finish watching this. But I did.
See, I thought this would be right up your alley, honestly, because like Mandy's talking about the stars and the planets and like all this symbolism is throughout the first half. And then the second half it just goes straight horror revenge and like it's got like all these elements to it, and I thought you'd like it, honestly.
I did just the other day watch your top 11 of 2018 because you're a rebel. And because of Mandy, I made 11. That's why. And I think you put it in like 8th place or something. And so I actually had that one segment of your video muted because I didn't want to hear what you had to say because I wanted to wait until today to hear it. And I'm just like, oh, okay. I'm like, okay, so this is why he's recommending it. He really loved it. And I know so many people were praising it. It's why I knew about it and I had considered watching it at some point. And even if you look it up, it says it had critical acclaim. And I'm just like, oh, that should have been a red flag for me. Anything that's like critically acclaimed, oh, we're usually not friends. But I have to ask, you said that it takes place on a different planet. Is that true or is that your interpretation of it?
Well, I'm just saying because there's a few shots of the horizon and there's multiple planets like within view. It may be Earth, like it just like, you know, magnified, like that's why things are going so crazy. But I like that. It's just I like that.
No, I think that's funny because that's totally into. This is one of those films that is so artistic, is the word I will use, that it leaves so much open to interpretation. And so I interpret. Oh my god. English language has failed me that I interpreted.
Oh, interpreted?
Thank you. I'm going blank on words. Thank you. That last shot, I actually I took a totally different route on that one shot. I thought that it was a shot of Jupiter and Saturn being united in the sky because there was that scene at the start of the film where they were talking about their favorite planets. And she said Jupiter and he said Saturn, although one of them didn't have a ring around it, and if there was, but still, I mean, I don't know if you can see a ring from Earth anyway, but just the fact that like he's hallucinating that she's there and it's like in some way they're reunited, so I thought like that was like a symbolic thing of them being reunited again.
And
so
you're
that was my interpretation of it. So
I like that though, and that's true. Like this movie, and that's like I just rewatched it right before we filmed this. Because I was like, oh yeah, I want to refamiliarize myself with it because it is such like a visually artistic film. Like, Cosmos, Panos Cosmatos. I always want to call him Cosmos. Panos Cosmatos takes his time with this movie and just lingers on everything. And honestly, like it's not like a bad thing. You're either with this movie or you're not. And that either way is fine, and I can see people not liking this movie. I'm not, like, with No Country for Old Men, I was surprised you didn't like it. I'm surprised you didn't like it with, like, all the horror aspects of this movie, but this movie is not for everybody. And that's fine. Like, it's not like this movie is not for everybody, with my monocle. But no, it's just not. And I was surprised how much I liked it, because sometimes slow movies, I'm like, all right, we get it, you're a director. Come on. But just all the conversations they were having, all the visual flair worked so well for me. And I think just that synthy red and blue tone, I'm just like a fan of, like from John Carpenter to Nicholas Winding Refn, who directed Neon Demon. Like I could live in that world forever. And so this movie was just right up my alley. And I'm so glad that it got recommended for me. And I was like, because, you know, it was in theaters for like a day. And then it went straight to streaming, and I caught it on stream, and so I just love it. But I get, like, I've shown this to plenty of people. It's honestly right down the middle, 50-50 of like, what? Or, oh my God, I want to live where these people want to live. It's like, okay, you don't want to live where a guy has a a blade for a penis and can murder rape you.
I'm gonna get to that. I am going to get to that. Best believe I am. But I mean, I like first episode, Krampus. I didn't hate it. It has some good moments, and you know, it's a fun film to talk about because there are moments that you can laugh about. No Country for Old Men, yeah, I found it monotonous, but again, I find it an intriguing film, so I didn't hate it, I just didn't like it. This film, I hated this film. I mean, it's so funny because you said you liked the first half better than the second half. I like the second half better than the first half. Like, the first part, I'm just like, oh my god, everything is, like, so fucking symbolic, and people are giving these cult speeches that are doing my head in. I'm like, oh my god, this dude really loves to hear himself talk. And I'm just going out of my mind. And then when it kicks into the revenge aspect, I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm in a place I understand. I don't think it's fantastic, but I at least can get it. I can follow it. And so I didn't have as hard a time watching the second half as I had with the first half. There was at least one moment where I had to stop watching because I was cracking up laughing so hard. And I don't, like, probably nobody, maybe I'm the only one who found it funny. But it's just that moment where, you know, they're holding her freaking hostage. They've got her drugged. He just opens up his robe, so unashamed, bearing all, and just before he does that, it's what he says that makes me lose it. He says, "You're special. I'm special. Let's be special together." I'm just like,
that's
that did not just happen.
Yeah, it's so terrible. Like, I feel like that's the point of it. Just like, he thinks like he's this divine person with, you know, God living inside of him. Like this, and that's why I love how evil they made Mandy's laugh, and it was like, it was the catharsis before the revenge. Because usually, like, you know, in these like revenge movies, like, oh, the woman is so helpless and like, oh, they just can't wait for the man to just take control and kill everybody. It's like, no, Mandy went out like a badass, like being drugged and like high on this, where everything is supposed to be in his favor. And I love that it wasn't like her laughing at like his naked body, but just, it was more of like the music. So everything is with music in this movie. It's like, this is your band and this song is about you, and she just starts dying laughing because it's the worst terrible song you've ever heard, and this guy is so high on his own shit. And that's one of my favorite moments before all the crazy stuff starts happening. Just like, oh, it's so great. But I do like the second half because it's so cathartic with just like murdering this biker gang, and Nicolas Cage, just him picking up that piece of glass and just like there's this much cocaine on it. And he doesn't even like, he doesn't even do this. He just goes, and it's like, all right, we caught Nicolas Cage in his trailer and somehow they filmed the scene before. And then I think my favorite scene, though, was in the bathroom after because he's tied up when Mandy dies.
Yeah.
And then after everyone leaves, he unties himself, and then he walks into the living room, and there's this commercial for Cheese Goblin playing, and it's the worst shit you've ever seen. This goblin is throwing up macaroni and cheese on kids to sell how cheesy their mac and cheese is. And one, I love it because Cheddar Goblin. And one, I love it because there are that scary of like animal brand reps out there that when you just take a step back and realizing like, oh, a vampire is selling me chocolate cereal? Count Chocula? What? Like, it's basically that. And also that no matter how terrible your life is, the world just keeps spinning. And so just like the TV isn't playing, you know, sad music or a crying scene. No, it's playing Cheddar Goblin. And then after he wakes up, he goes into the bathroom and truly has his meltdown. And that meltdown is why you hire Nicolas Cage. Because,
He's
yes,
good at those. I'll give him that.
he's like, and that's what I feel like. Nicolas Cage is in two types of movies nowadays. He's in straight to Redbox or VOD, where he pays off his gambling debts. And then he's in these like tiny little independent films with directors that can use him. And that scene, that bathroom scene, is the perfect epitome of why you get him. And I legitimately felt like the cameraman was afraid to get too close because it's like panning in and then it like backs up a few steps when he like really screams, and it's so good. That's really where I kind of bought in, because like it's kind of slow, the death is brutal, and then that scene is just like, it's almost like, you know, the music building up to the revenge part of the movie, and that's where it starts. And then him building the battle axe, the huge axe, is so ridiculous. And then he lights a cigarette off the guy's severed flaming head. That's when it gets. That's when you're really in or out, and you can have fun with the movie. But even then, just all the trippy drug stuff. How this is filmed is why I love it. Because if it was filmed like a normal movie, it'd probably be like on the Sci-Fi Channel or something. But
I probably would have liked it even more then.
I love how this is filmed, like, and the music that's playing, like, all the heavy metal influences of this movie. Oh, it's really right up my alley, but like I said, I get why people would not like it.
I mean, the film is set in the early 1980s, and the tone of the film very much feels like 80s horror to me. In fact, there were so many things in this film, I don't know whether they're intentional or not, but they definitely, I was just like, oh, hang on, that makes me think of this film, and that makes me think of this film, and I even actually started listing them down, because I'm just like, how many of these are there? And again, I don't know if it's intentional or not. It is possible for two people to have the same idea and have no relation to each other, but the cinematography and the score of this film very much reminded me of the original Suspiria, which I also hated, despite everybody's like, oh my god, so amazing. I watched it last year. I'm like, I hate you people.
I haven't seen it. I just saw the remake a few weeks ago. I thought the remake was okay.
I'm watching the remake this October, but because I'd heard for years, like, people say this is one of the best horror films ever, so you hear that, I'm gonna watch it, and I watched it last year. I'm like, it actually gave me a headache, and I'm not saying that as a euphemism or anything. I mean, the way the cinematography was done, the constant changing of lights and everything, and compared with the music, which the back score was so loud, and I thought maybe it was my copy that was bad, but no, apparently that's how the film was done. It was actually giving me a headache. I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, it's one of those things where it's like they say if there's strobe lights, epileptic people shouldn't watch it. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Demon biker with knife penis. God.
Yes.
7. That's 7.
Yes,
that took me
absolutely.
straight to the last scene, which is, for me, that's the most traumatic death of that scene. It's just like, oh, what happened? And then when they show you, like, oh god. And you know, for guys, when when you guys watch some guy get kicked in the nuts, you feel it. I felt this I felt. I'm like, that could put you off ever having sex again. The wife in this film kind of reminded me a fair bit of the wife in The Shining. There was something about the performance and where they are that they seem very much alike to me. Also, the cinematography, again, it's funny. There's a film that I just watched. It was an anthology horror film, and it's called The Field Guide to Evil. And it's an anthology, so it's got all these different shorts in it. And one of them is a short film that comes out of Greece, and it's called Whatever Happened to Panna the Pagan. And the way it's shot and the colors and everything, there are certain elements, like when I guess they're depicting, like, I guess I'd call it hell.
Okay.
The way the lights and everything depict hell, near identical to this film. And so then I find out that the director of this film is Greek Canadian, and then I'm immediately wondering, is that visual style the style of, like, Greek horror films. Obviously, I've only now seen one, but the fact that then there's this and this, and I'm like, okay, maybe that's how they do those type of films over there, which I do find interesting. Whether I like it or not, I find it interesting because when you start watching films from different countries, you kind of start noticing that certain countries have their own unique style to doing films, and I'm wondering if this is Greece's particular filming style. Maybe they're just use of color is their thing. I don't know. I'd have to start watching more Greek films to find that out, but I'm not against watching more Greek horror films. Then, as you pointed out, they said they live at Crystal Lake, so I'm just like, what? Where's Jason?
Yeah.
Where are he at?
That was... I like references and like homages and stuff like that, but man, that like, and you know, one of the biker guys has like finger knives that he like slashes one guy's face with, and I was like, okay, that's okay, because I mean that's just like a thing that's just aesthetic. But man, that Crystal Lake thing, second time watching, I was like call it Lake Crystal, just do that, just call it Lake Crystal. I don't care, or Diamond Lake or Sapphire Lake, and I'll still get. You're talking about Camp Crystal Lake. You can't call it Crystal Lake. You just can't.
The demon bikers, when the first time we see them, when they roll up, and they're pretty much in the dark. The only thing that kind of illuminates them is the headlights from their bikes. And when you get a very limited glimpse at them, I was immediately thinking Cenobites.
Is that from Hellraiser?
Yeah.
Okay, that's I was gonna say Hellraiser. Yeah.
Yeah, they very much remind me of that. I would have absolutely died. I would have rolled on the floor laughing if one of them rocked up and instead of saying like blood for blood, he said, "We'll tear your soul apart." I'd have cracked out. That would have been hilarious. The chainsaw fight is like somewhere between Texas Chainsaw. Did I say Texas? What?
Texas, yeah.
What is with me today? I haven't actually slept. I've gotten like barely any sleep. I'll blame that. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in the second one, there was pretty much a chainsaw fight. So it was that, but it was also a bit of Evil Dead.
Yeah.
It's like combining the two. So you've got like so many classic 70s, 80s horror references there. And I don't know if that's intentional or not, but as a horror fan, I always find it interesting when I spot those things. So if they are intentional, then I think that they were actually incorporated in a really good way where you could go and go, oh, no, these aren't tributes, this is just the natural film. Or if you're a person who does know these things, you're like, I see those. But for the majority of the film, I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't deal with it. I was trying so hard. I mean, our cult leader is a total cult leader. Like, he totally, he drank his own Kool-Aid. He believes his own spiel. And yet, usually, cult leaders are brilliant psychopaths and narcissists. They're narcissists to a perfect degree, and they are unwavering, and even you could be threatening them, they're not going to change their stance because they believe it so deeply. And yet it was kind of funny to see, like, there's Nicolas Cage, he's left him for last, he's there, he's not saying anything, just the rage is just radiating off him, and that's all that needs to be said. And the dude's just going into his speech of how, you know, he was chosen by God, and I'm like, it's so weird that you think you're like an instrument of God, but you work with demons. I'm confused. But and then as soon as like he goes from giving that speech to 5 seconds later screaming and crying, "I'll suck your dick."
Yeah.
Like, begging, like, please don't kill me. And then he does another flip, and he's like, no, you know what? I'm better than you. I'm like, you're really not in a prime position to take that stance right now.
That's what I love. Like, Linus Roach is so good in this movie. Like, just that one scene where Nicolas Cage is about to crush his skull, and he goes from like I'm this divine person to come on man, I'll do anything, and then you like it, you know, like because the lights like going in and out, and I thought that was so genius to do. One for like to change like whatever personality he's gonna do, and then two to like incorporate like the practical effect of like him crushing his head. I thought that was like a perfect way to be like, all right, we switched beds, so here's the fake one crushed, but just like his, and then Nicolas Cage just responding with "I'm your god now," and then just, oh, like that's just the perfect. I think that's the last thing Nicolas Cage says in the movie, and
I
it's
think
just
so.
like super audio dubbed like demon voice, like I'm your god now, and then just the practical effects in this movie are amazing. All the gushing blood and decapitated heads and crushed skulls and burned corpses, just everything. And like you said, like all the Cenobite costumes, all the demon biker gang crackhead guys are all their designs are similar, but you can recognize each one. And it's every like there are so many good references to other horror movies, but it's done like you said. You know, he's a lumberjack at the beginning of the movie, so the chainsaws make sense. Like there's all these things planted throughout that make sense later when it comes up, and so like you know stuff like Stranger Things. I like the first season of Stranger Things, but then I felt like the studio was like, oh, they like the '80s. Let's make everything about the '80s. Every single line in this movie or this show has to be '80s referenced. And even in this last season, the chief of police, Hellboy, David Harbour, he's like walking out with a bottle of wine. He's like, I can do whatever I want. I'm the chief of police. It's like, yeah, dude, we've seen Jaws too. All right, I get it. Or like even in the new It movie, it's not a spoiler, but there's like a little like someone's head turns into a spider, like in The Thing. And just like it's one thing to do that, like that would be a cool homage. Like, oh yeah, I've seen The Thing, that's fine. But then literally, just like in The Thing, Bill Hader looks at the spider and goes, "You got to be fucking kidding!" And that's the line that's said in The Thing. Like, what? You're literally gonna rip that off like shot for shot, word for word? That's not an homage or reference. That's just stealing. Like, that's just being unoriginal. So there is that fine line, and I felt like Panos Cosmatos like did that so well. Like, yes, we all love Crystal Lake and Freddy, and he combines horror movies that have held up, like Suspiria, even though I know you don't like it, but that's a classic, or the first Halloween. Or Scream, all these movies that have held up over the years. Is like I felt like it, like the first half, like that suspense, that slowness, people relate to that, and then the second part is all the sequels to all those movies where like, okay, we've done the character stuff, now we just want to see Freddy say bitch and chop someone's head off. Like, okay, that's fine too. Like, you find both of those things in this movie, and I felt like it was a really good combination, and like. I felt like if you would have gone a little more with each one, it might not have worked as well. So I felt like the suspense and the horror is the first part, and the second part is just straight up ridiculousness, like almost like that movie Crank with Jason Statham, where he's got to like keep his heartbeat up and all this. He's jumping out of helicopters and surviving.
Knowing the fact that there are some bizarre moments in this film, like the fact that like. Cult stuff, I thought that this was all going to be based very much in the world of, I'll say reality, I guess I'll say. And then, of course, when we have demon bikers in, I'm like, now I'm a little thrown. So I didn't know what the genre is that I'm in. But then I was watching when they burn Mandy's body. And afterwards when Nicolas Cage gets free of the barbed wire that he's tied up with. That's unpleasant.
Yeah.
It was, I was watching it, and I was watching her ashes, and I started to get really mad, and I started to get super technical, and I'm yelling facts at the film, and I'm going, Ashleigh, there are demon bikers. I don't think logic works here.
Yeah.
Trying to talk myself out of it, because basic science is all these films, horror film, even basic thrillers and cop shows, they're like, oh yeah, they set someone on fire and now the body is ash. Scientifically, that's impossible. It actually takes a high level of heat to actually cremate a body. It's why when you go to a crematorium, like, it's all an insulator and it's up at a high heat. You can't actually just flick a match on someone and they turn to ash. It doesn't happen. The body will cool down too fast before it reaches that point. So I was just like, that would never happen. But then I, of course, had to remind myself, I'm like, come on. Why are you even bothering to try to go science-y on this particular film? I mean, I think what this film really is a giant PSA on why not to do drugs. That's what I think.
I'd be okay with that because they're not actually demon bikers. Like we've both been calling them that. They're just guys that took that drug. You know, the chemist guy that had the tiger, like, was making all these people these crazy drugs, and it made them like these demon bikers. But they're really just crackheads, basically. When it comes down to it, they're just drug fiends, and that's why that guy was doing that mound of cocaine, because he's just watching porn and doing lots of cocaine.
I mean, it's just like every aspect of this film is like it's an LSD trip, and it truly is. And of course, it just so happens that that's the story of the bikers who were called the Black Skulls, I believe it was.
Okay.
Yeah, where it's like saying, yeah, they took a bad batch of LSD. I'm like, that was a really fucking bad batch of LSD.
Yeah, it's a bad batch.
Like, can you actually sue the chemist for that one?
God.
There may be a good case for a lawsuit. I remember that moment where we saw knife penis getting erect. Like, I thought cocaine was meant to have the opposite effect. I thought it was meant to kill that, not help someone.
That's why he has a knife for a penis and not an actual penis.
I was so confused, but then it totally explained the shot before that, where there was the couple who were dead, and it was just the naked guy, and he's over the bed, and his ass is just completely covered in blood, and I'm like, my brain has instantly gone to rape, but no, I'm sure that's not what's happened. I'm like, there's some other excuse for what's going on here. And then as soon as, like, you see this dude just snorting this mountain of cocaine and while he's watching porn, and then you just see this knife in his groin become erect, I'm like, oh God, everything is just falling into place, and I don't want it to.
Yeah. It's still covered in blood.
Oh no.
Yeah. There's some crazy imagery in this, and like I said, like, I get why people wouldn't like it or be super into it like I was, but for some reason this just hit my sweet spot, and like throughout the entire 2-hour runtime I was just completely transfixed. And even watching this a second time just today, I was like, yep, it's confirmed. Because, you know, there are those movies where you're like, oh, that was really cool, and then you go back, you're like, what was I thinking? But it was not one of those. But out of 5, what are you giving Mandy?
Even though I've been able to say some things, and there's still room for conversation to a degree, I can try to find positives to say, but I still can't give myself a positive feeling towards this film, so I give it a 0.
Wow, even after all that, I thought maybe I'd get half a star out of you, but nope.
I would still say, like, I don't like the performances, but I think the performances are great, because you have to be completely committed to act out the absurd bonkers shit that happens in this movie. So kudos to all the actors for being so committed, but I didn't like it. I was desperate for it to end. I think that the second half is slightly redeems the first half, even if you have a completely different take on that, but I would never watch this again. I'm not going near it with a barge pole. So there's a 0 from me. So
Man.
And
I give Mandy a 4 out of 5. It's
really,
not a perfect movie. Because I can see why people wouldn't like it. I really enjoyed myself. I just everything about this movie kind of sings for me, but just some of the like you just kind of have to. It's kind of one of those movies where you have to buy into it right away,
hmm
and that is kind of almost not a detriment to the film, but it is kind of like a make or break thing right off the bat, and so that can be kind of a bad thing. But I love this movie, and I'm gonna watch it a lot more because I hadn't seen it in a while, so I was like, you know what, it's kind of cheap on Amazon, so I bought the Blu-ray, and so I'm gonna be spreading the Mandy around with anybody that wants to come see it.
I'm so surprised that you only give it a 4 out of 5, considering it was in your top 11 of 2018.
Yeah, it wasn't as like kind of ethereal as I remember. I felt like, as weird as this sounds, I felt like a little more grounded this time around. As weird as you can say that about Mandy, but I still love like just all the visual flair of it. I love the soundtrack. The score is so good. I just love directors really putting themselves in their films, like not with like over like almost like not like Quentin Tarantino where he puts feet everywhere and just can't help but give himself a cameo,
Yeah.
and he's a shitty actor, but just like giving just everything you have to film, like setting up just these meaningless shots of someone walking, but you do it in such a way that you can't take your eyes off the screen. Some throwaway line, like you can't not bend your ear for it, and I do like that. So yeah, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna give it a 4.8.
He talked himself into saying, no, I
Yeah,
love it more than I thought I did.
I do love it more than I thought.
Yeah,
Ashley, do you want to talk about our next podcast?
I would love to. Next month is October, so kind of got to feel like we got to go on theme here, but saying horror is just too broad. It's too easy. So we've decided to go a little bit more general. So next month's topic is going to be foreign horror films. So you're going to have to check into that episode to find out what films we have selected for each other. But I am very optimistic with the choices we have. I actually think this is going to be the first one Ben likes. I'm willing to put money on
about
it.
Ashleigh.
I'm willing to put money on this. I will PayPal you if I lose.
Oh wow, okay.
And I actually think that this is going to be the first pick from Ben for me that I'm also going to love. So I'm really looking forward to that. But as always, we thank everyone who watches and listens, whether it be on YouTube or SoundCloud. Thank you so much. If you are watching us on YouTube, then you will find links to mine and Ben's YouTube channel and social media. So if you don't feel like checking me out, because maybe you hate my taste, go and check out Ben and subscribe to him if you want to try something different. And if you hate Ben's taste and you're like, right, then check out my stuff. It's all good.
It's a strong possibility.
We got variety here. It's
We do.
we're 3 episodes in, and despite the fact that we have not come to a unanimous feeling towards a film, we still continue to prove that you can still have a civilized, respectful conversation even if you don't agree. And so far,
It's the internet.
So far, we are pros at having different movie opinions, which surprises me because prior to making this series, there are so many films that we've talked about that we both totally agree on, and then suddenly everything we're picking for this, polar opposites.
Yep.
How did that happen?
I don't know, but I'm enjoying myself so far, and it's fun to talk about stuff and see movies that I never would have seen, even though like I haven't liked really any of them. But I am looking forward to our the next movie because I love foreign horror. It's like what I've seen I really enjoyed, and I'm excited to see more of it because I'm still such a novice when it comes to horror. So I'm looking forward to this movie, and I'm hoping this breaks the cycle. I want to like your movies. I really
like
do.
yours. I don't want to trash anything. Although it almost seems like we're going in opposite directions. Mine is slowly getting better as you're going up, but the ones you're giving me was slowly going down. But
Yeah, slowly getting worse.
But fingers crossed for episode 4. You know, it's one of my favorite times of the year, that and Christmas, so it's going to be great. And I don't know, I think we're going to end up having so much to talk about with these 2 films. It's probably going to be an extra long episode, which, you know what? I don't care. Anybody who loves talking about movies loves listening to people who talk about movies, so I think fun times are ahead. Some crazy times are ahead too. So
yes, absolutely.
Definitely check out the next episode when it's available. And if you haven't checked out the episodes prior to this, I highly recommend going and listening to those as well.
And I promise real quick before we go, I promise that after Halloween, we're going to do some happy themed movies for the holidays. Maybe not Christmas themed movies, but after revenge and horror and foreign horror, and comedy horror, we are going to do some happy movies. I promise you guys, we are not just dark and depressing over here and blood-filled and gory. We are going to do some happy themed movies.
Christmas is a safe time. We're going to find something in the Christmas realm. And it's gonna be good. I believe that. I have faith. Yes. I don't think you can go wrong with a Christmas movie.
You really can't. They're all so great. Even I live for those Hallmark movies. They're so pure and just the towns are decorated so well. I just want to live there.
They're the most wholesome movies you could ever watch. It's like
they're rated G. Even though they're adults, about adults having adult problems, they're all rated G because there's no cussing, there's no violence, there's nothing. The problems are so first world, and I'm so okay with that. I don't care.
You know what? Christmas movies are the only films where I have not really had to use a kill it with fire rating, or any.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I may have used it for one Home Alone film. It was one of those one of the crappy sequels.
That's fair.
But besides that, I think I've only used it twice. One for a Home Alone film, and the other one was for 4 Holidays with Reese Witherspoon and Vince Vaughn.
You didn't like that? You don't like 4 Christmases?
I don't.
Oh, that movie cracks me up.
It's just so negative.
See, that's one how I said I didn't like Meet the Parents. That one, they are kind of communicating with each other, but things are falling apart. But Vince Vaughn's brothers are the best part of that movie. Denver and Dallas, they crack me up. And then, what's her name? Her blonde sister. She's so funny.
Oh, but she's played by Kristen Chenoweth, who I love.
Yes, Kristen Chenoweth destroys that role. She's so good.
Oh, they need her in more Christmas movies. People actually don't like Deck the Halls. I love that movie, and Kristen Chenoweth is great in that movie.
I'll watch anything with Kristen Chenoweth in it because she's amazing. No, I need to see it.
I may have to tell you to watch that one for December.
I'm fine with it. If Kristen Chenoweth's in it, I'm fine with it.
It's also Kristen Chenoweth in a lot of low-cut tops, so...
that's Christmas right there. Christmas comes early, baby.
Something's coming.
Take the low-hanging fruit.
I'm not touching that
Okay,
one.
on that note, I'm going to sign us off before this gets even worse. So thanks so much for watching and or listening, guys, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.